Radio Grafton. And now it's time for our weekly phone-in programme, Over to You. Here's Jane Sedgwick.
Hello, everybody. Today we've got Pete Blatchford in our studio. Now, that may not be a name you're familiar with, but Pete is a record producer, and he's been involved with some of the most famous rock groups in the world. Pete, how did you get into the business?
Well, I used to work in theatre as a stagehand. You know, I used to move scenery, that kind of thing. But then we did a musical at my theatre, and I became friends with the musicians. They became a group called the Sirens of Titan, and the rest is history.
Yes, indeed, Pete. And now they're one of the biggest groups around. Is the record business a good one to work in? Would you advise young people to try and get into it?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, if I was starting all over again, I'd want to do the same thing. Mind you, it isn't much fun if you don't have any success. And not everybody loves pop music, you know.
Yes, that's true. But now, listeners, the lines are open for questions to Pete Blatchford. Our number is 653-8451. And I think we have our first caller, Mr. Giles Prescott from here in London. Good morning, Mr. Prescott.
Good morning, Miss Sedgwick. Good morning, Mr. Blatchford.
Hi.
What do you want to say to Pete Blatchford, Mr. Prescott?
Well, the point I want to make is this. All these young pop stars get paid fantastic sums of money. They get paid more than nurses, teachers, policemen, even more than doctors. And I think that's terrible. I mean, it's a disgrace. And what's going to happen to them when they're not top of the pops anymore?
So what exactly is your question, Mr. Prescott?
Well, I suppose... what I want to know is why are pop stars paid so much money?
Well, Mr. Prescott, I don't think they are. You see, you've got to realize that they only earn a lot of money if people like their music. And they work very hard. Like sometimes they play 6 different places a week, and they're writing new songs, and they're spending time in the recording studio. I mean, they really are working.
Yes, and driving around in expensive cars, wearing disgusting clothes, and behaving very badly. Do you know that half of them don't even get up in the morning? They stay in bed nearly all day, and on top of that,
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Prescott. I think you've made your point. And now we have another caller, Mrs. Janice Miller. Hello, Mrs. Miller.
Hello? My question is, what has happened to the Sirens of Titan? They haven't released any new records for 6 months now.
Well, Mrs. Miller, they're just, resting. They had a very exhausting year last year, you know.
Oh, yes, I know. But I heard that Stig Tracker has left the group. I mean, is that true? Stig's the best guitarist around, and if he left the group, I mean, it would be terrible.
Now, don't you worry, Mrs. Miller. It's true that Stig and the boys have had a difficult time lately, but they've not split up. In fact, I can tell you, although this is really a secret, that they're in the studio recording a new album right now.
Oh, good. That's wonderful news.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. And now we go to Jean Mayers in Paris. Hello, Miss Mayers. What's your question?
It's this. I'm a member of a group. We play heavy metal music, and we think we're pretty good.
I'm sure you are, Miss Mayers.
Oh, thanks. But the point is, we made a tape of our music, and we had lots of copies made, and we sent them off to just about every record company in Britain.
And what happened, Miss Mayers? What's the problem?
We haven't had a single reply. Not one of the companies has written to us. They haven't even returned our tapes. What can we do?
Well, yes, I can understand that you feel rather upset. But there is a problem. I get about 200 tapes a week from people who want to make a record, and it's almost impossible to listen to them all. And I certainly don't have time to write to all of the people who send them in.
Miss Mayers, is that answer all right for you?
Well, yes, I understand, but I still don't understand what we can do. How can we try and get our tape listened to?
I'll tell you what, Miss Mayers. If you can get to my office on Monday next week with a copy of your tape, I promise I'll listen to it. I may not like it, but I will listen to it.
Oh, that's great. Thanks.
So there's at least one happy listener. And now we go to a caller from Spain.